You know the feeling, that quiet moment when you first wake up, when the world is still soft and the day hasn't yet formed its shape. And yet, before your eyes have fully adjusted to the light, your hand is already reaching. Not towards something beautiful, not towards someone you love, but toward the screen, toward the endless current of news, updates, catastrophes. You tell yourself you're just checking, just seeing what happened while you were gone. But somewhere beneath that intention, there's a weight, a dread. Because you already know, don't you, that whatever you find there will not bring you peace. This is what we call doomscrolling, the compulsive act of consuming endless streams of negative news and information, even when, especially when, it makes us feel worse. And alongside it lives something quieter, more insidious: information anxiety. That constant, low-level hum of worry that you're missing something critical, that you're not informed enough, that if you just read one more article, watch one more video, you'll finally understand what's happening and feel safe. But here's the paradox, the quiet tragedy at the heart of this behavior. We scroll searching for certainty, for a sense of control over a chaotic world. What we create instead is more fear, more overwhelm, more distance from the very life we're trying to protect. This isn't about willpower. This isn't about being weak or disciplined. This is about a survival mechanism, millions of years old, colliding with technology designed to exploit it. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's just doing it in a world it was never designed for. Let's go back, far back, to the savannah, to the forests, to the caves. Your ancestors lived in a world where information meant survival. The rustle in the grass could be wind. It could be a predator. The distant sound could be rain, or it could be danger approaching. And so the brain learned something essential. Pay attention to the negative. Remember the threats. The ancestors who worried survived. The ones who didn't. This is what psychologists call negativity bias, the brain's deep-wired tendency to notice, remember, and react more strongly to negative information than positive. It's not a flaw, it's a feature. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm system deep in your brain, lights up faster and brighter for threat than for safety. Because in the calculus of evolution, missing a threat could cost you everything. Missing an opportunity for joy? You'd have another chance tomorrow. But here's what changed. In that ancient world, threats were immediate, physical, and finite. You saw the predator or you didn't. The danger passed or it didn't. Your nervous system could activate, respond, and then rest. The news cycle in the natural world had a beginning and an end. Now, the threats are everywhere and endless. They pour through your screen in an infinite stream. A political crisis on one continent, a climate disaster on another, economic collapse, war, injustice. And because your brain still operates with that ancient logic, it treats each headline like a rustle in the grass, each notification like a shadow in the periphery. Your amygdala doesn't know the difference between a lion and a news alert. It just knows threat detected. Pay attention. Stay vigilant. And then, the modern trap closes around you. Because the platforms that deliver this information, they're not neutral messengers. They're designed with extraordinary precision to keep you scrolling. Every time you pull down to refresh, every time a new story loads, your brain gets a tiny hit of dopamine, that neurotransmitter associated with reward, anticipation, seeking. Not satisfaction, seeking. This is the dopamine reward loop, and it works even when the information is terrible, especially when it's terrible, because novelty triggers dopamine, and negative news is always novel. There's always a new crisis, always a new reason to worry. Your brain, seeking that next hit of maybe this will be the information I need, keeps you locked in the cycle, scrolling for answers, finding only more questions, more fear. The algorithms understand this better than you understand yourself. They know that outrage keeps you engaged, that fear keeps you clicking, that the more emotionally charged the content, the longer you'll stay. You're not weak for falling into this pattern. You're human. You're running ancient software in a modern world, and that world has learned exactly which buttons to push. And there's more, something called the availability heuristic. Your brain, trying to make sense of the world, uses a mental shortcut. It assumes that the things you see and hear most often are the most common, the most likely to happen to you. So when your feed is filled with disasters, crimes, tragedies, your brain starts to believe that the world is more dangerous than it actually is, that catastrophe is always just around the corner, that you're surrounded by threats. The reality? Most of what you see in your doom scroll is statistical noise amplified into emotional signal. But your perception shifts. The world begins to feel darker, more hostile, more overwhelming. Not because the world has changed, but because the information you're consuming has rewired your sense of what's normal.
So what does this do to you? Not just in the moment, but over time, day after day, week after week of this constant vigilance. Your body doesn't know you're safe. When your brain perceives threat, even abstract, distant, digital threat, it responds the way it always has. It floods your system with stress hormones, cortisol primarily, that chemical messenger that tells every cell in your body, danger is here, be ready. In short bursts, cortisol is helpful. It sharpens your focus, prepares you to act. But when it becomes chronic, when your body is bathing in these stress chemicals day after day because you can't stop consuming information that your brain interprets as threatening, something breaks. Your sleep suffers first. Cortisol disrupts the delicate architecture of rest, making it harder to fall asleep, harder to stay asleep, harder to reach the deep, restorative stages where your brain processes emotion and consolidates memory. You wake up tired, and when you're tired, your emotional regulation weakens. You become more reactive, more irritable, more susceptible to, you guessed it, anxiety, which makes you more likely to seek information to soothe that anxiety, which creates more cortisol, which disrupts more sleep. The cycle tightens. Your memory begins to blur. Chronic stress impairs the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for forming new memories and retrieving old ones. Information starts to feel overwhelming, not just emotionally, but cognitively. You can't hold it all, can't process it all. The term for this is cognitive overload, that state where your brain, flooded with more information than it can meaningfully integrate, simply starts to shut down. You read the headlines and nothing sticks. You watch the videos and feel numb, not because you don't care, but because you've exceeded your capacity to care. And then there's the emotional cost, the quiet one, the one that's harder to name. You start to feel disconnected, not just from the world, but from your own life. Because every moment you spend in that scroll, consuming information about distant crises you cannot control, is a moment you're not present for the life you're actually living, the people at your table, the beauty outside your window, the small, sacred ordinary of your existence. This is what researchers call emotional exhaustion, not the dramatic burnout of too much work, but the slow, steady depletion that comes from caring about everything, all the time, with no relief. You feel helpless, powerless. Like no matter how much you know, no matter how informed you become, you can't fix what's broken, can't stop what's coming. And that feeling, that learned helplessness, it doesn't make you stop scrolling, it makes you scroll more. Because if you can't change anything, at least you can stay informed. At least you can bear witness. At least you can, what? Suffer alongside everyone else? As if your anxiety, your exhaustion, your constant vigilance somehow helps? But it doesn't help. It doesn't change anything except you. The cruelest part of this cycle is that the very thing you're doing to try to regain a sense of control, scrolling, seeking, consuming, is the thing that's stealing your sovereignty, your presence, your peace. You think you're staying connected to the world. What you're actually doing is abandoning yourself.
But here's what you need to know, and please hear this gently. You're not trapped. Not permanently. Not irreversibly. The way out doesn't require perfect discipline or superhuman willpower. It requires something quieter and more profound: intentionality. The courageous choice to pause, to interrupt the pattern, to ask yourself, in a moment of honest self-reflection, what am I actually doing right now? What am I seeking? And is this giving me what I need? That pause, that single moment of mindful awareness is where everything changes. Because doom scrolling isn't usually conscious, it's automatic, habitual. Your hand reaches for the phone before your mind has even registered the decision. But when you introduce awareness, when you catch yourself in the act and simply notice, without judgment, without shame, you create space, and in that space, choice becomes possible. This is the foundation of cognitive behavioral approaches to breaking compulsive patterns. You don't fight the urge. You don't white-knuckle your way through it. You observe it. You name it. I'm feeling anxious, and I want to scroll to soothe that anxiety. Just naming it, just seeing it clearly, weakens its grip. From there, you can begin to set boundaries, not as punishment, but as protection, as an act of self-compassion. Time blocking is powerful in its simplicity. You designate specific times when you'll check the news, and specific times when you won't. Maybe it's 20 minutes in the morning. Maybe it's 30 minutes in the evening. The key is that it's bounded, contained. You're not cutting yourself off from information. You're choosing when and how you engage with it. You're taking back control of the relationship. Device-free zones can transform your environment from a battlefield into a sanctuary. Your bedroom, perhaps, becomes a place where screens don't enter, or your dining table, or the first hour after you wake. These boundaries aren't about deprivation. They're about creating space for presence, for connection, for the parts of life that actually nourish you. And here's what's remarkable. When you interrupt the cycle, when you replace the compulsive scroll with something else, a walk, a conversation, a moment of stillness, your brain begins to remember what peace feels like. The dopamine loop that kept you trapped, it can be redirected. You can train your brain to seek satisfaction in presence rather than an endless information seeking. There's also the work of challenging the thought patterns themselves. When you feel that pull to check the news, that anxiety that you're missing something critical, pause and ask, what do I believe will happen if I don't check? Often the answer is catastrophic thinking. I'll be uninformed, I won't know what's happening, something terrible will occur and I won't be prepared. But is that true? Will your life meaningfully change if you miss one news cycle, one day of headlines, 1 week? Or is the fear itself the problem? Not the lack of information, but the belief that you must consume it all to be safe. This is where cognitive reframing becomes your ally. Instead of "I need to stay informed," try "I can stay informed without being consumed." Instead of "the world is falling apart," try "the world contains both beauty and suffering, and I can hold both without drowning in either." Instead of "I'm powerless," try "I'm powerful over my attention, my presence, my peace." These aren't affirmations you repeat mechanically, they're genuine shifts in perspective, rooted in truth, because you are powerful over your attention. That's the one thing no algorithm, no headline, no notification can take from you unless you let it. Mindfulness practices, brief ones, even just a few minutes a day, have been shown to reduce the compulsive pull of doom scrolling. Not because they make you enlightened or detached, but because they train your brain to return to the present moment, to notice when you've drifted into anxiety or overwhelm, to gently, without judgment, guide yourself back to what's actually here, right now, in front of you. You don't need to be perfectly informed about everything happening everywhere. That's an impossible standard, and it's killing you slowly. What you need is to be fully present for the life you're living, for the people you love, for the small, sacred moments that make up a human existence. The goal isn't ignorance, it's wholeness. It's the recognition that you can care about the world without sacrificing yourself to it, that you can be informed without being consumed, that your presence, your peace, your mental and emotional health, these are not luxuries, they're necessities, and they're worth protecting. So here we are, at the end of this exploration, this journey from ancient instinct to modern trap to conscious choice. You were never broken. Your brain was just doing what brains do, seeking safety, seeking information, seeking control in an uncertain world. The problem was never you. It was the collision between your beautiful, ancient nervous system and a digital landscape designed to exploit it. But now you know. You understand the negativity bias that makes bad news so magnetic. You understand the dopamine loops that keep you scrolling. You understand the cognitive overload, the chronic stress, the emotional exhaustion. You understand how the very thing you're doing to try to feel safe is the thing that's stealing your peace. And more importantly, you understand that you have a choice. Not a perfect choice, not an easy one, but a real one nonetheless. The choice to pause, to notice, to set boundaries, to challenge the thoughts that keep you trapped, to redirect your attention toward what's actually present, actually real, actually within your power to affect. The victory you're seeking, it's not in knowing everything. It's not in being perfectly informed about every crisis, every catastrophe, every threat. The victory is in reclaiming sovereignty over your own attention, in recognizing that your presence is the most important thing you possess and it's worth protecting. There will always be news. There will always be reasons to worry. The world will continue to contain suffering and injustice and uncertainty. None of that changes whether you scroll for 5 minutes or 5 hours. What changes is you, your peace, your capacity to show up for your own life. So tonight or tomorrow morning, when you feel that familiar pull, that urge to reach for the phone to check just one more time, I want you to remember something. Remember that you're not seeking information. You're seeking safety. And safety doesn't live in the scroll. It lives in the pause, in the breath, in the deliberate, courageous choice to be here, now, with yourself. The world doesn't need your anxiety. It doesn't need your exhaustion. What it needs, what the people you love need, is your presence, your clarity, your peace. And that peace,
It's not something you find in the news. It's something you create by choosing again and again to come home to yourself, to trust that you are enough, that you know enough, that you don't have to carry the weight of the entire world to be worthy of rest. You can put the phone down. You can let the news cycle continue without you. You can choose presence over information, peace over vigilance, wholeness over endless seeking. The current will always be there, churning, relentless, pulling you. But you don't have to let it carry you away anymore. You can stand still. You can breathe. You can remember that the most important information you'll ever have is this: you're alive. You're here. And this moment, right now, is the only one that truly belongs to you. That's enough. You're enough. And the peace you're seeking, it's been waiting for you all along in the quiet space between the scroll and the pause, where you finally, blessedly, let yourself rest.